chapters we cover and what types of writing we cover. We're going to read the chapter headings, and then we'll read a couple of the beginnings of chapters, and then we'll move on towards the end.
So our second chapter is fiction writing or creating dead time stories. And the made-up author of this chapter is Sybil. Sybil is a wisp of a woman. Born in ancient Cumae, she wished for eternal life, and failing to also wish for eternal youth, became a zombie instead. Let this be a lesson to writers everywhere on the value of precise language. Zombified at the tender age of 20, long before Emperor Nero's reign, there's very little left to her now. She's nothing to look at, and the years have not been kind. To say she's skin and bones wouldn't be an accurate cliche. In fact, she's barely a whisper trapped inside a hanging basket now. Decay will do that to a person. If only she'd realized sooner that eating the flesh of the living could have eased that terrible ache inside her. Still, she's a heck of a writer. With practically nothing but a mind left, she's fortunate that's the case. We helped a bit with the translation and transcription, since she speaks an ancient Greek dialect and her fingers are literally worn down to nubs. But this chapter comes from her.
And that chapter is about fiction.
You want to read the rest of the chapter titles?
So that's fiction. The next chapter is writing poetry. We cover a little bit of everything. So this chapter is writing poetry, or do poets decompose like the thorn or the rose? And it's written by the big bad werewolf. And we're not going to do everything. Chapter 4, that is narrative writing. And narrative writing, or Are You My Mummy, was penned by...
Susan Camus.
Yes. So, as you probably already know, we've approached this writing guide from a very humorous, light region, dark region. And so in every chapter we've taken on a different persona and how they would have written about poetry or narrative writing. But each chapter really does get heavily into, if we're writing about poetry, you will learn a lot about poetry. If you don't, styles, etc. So it's a textbook in disguise. Chapter, and at the end of each chapter, there's prompts and exercises for that chapter.
For those high school students that don't like to write.
Yeah, as a teacher, Stan, sometimes those are the best textbooks out.
This is what
We
we're
try.
doing. Chapter 5 is writing memoirs. And this one we wrote as if we had 3 different submissions on writing memoirs. The first one is Memoirs of a Vampire, or What a Tangled Vein We Bleed. And we've got charts. We've got all kinds of cool graphics in here with funny little captions. The second person that submitted for this one, it's Memoirs of a Zombie, or Nom Nom Nom, written by Zombie X. And the last person submitting to this was Frankenstein's Monster. It's called Memoirs of Frankenstein Monster, or Memoirs of a Not So Modern Prometheus.
Chapter heads?
Yep.
All right. Analytical writing, or I Know Why the Caged Vampire Bites. That one is by Dr. Van Helsing. How can you have a horror writing manual without Dr. Van Helsing? And includes a sample paper. Yes, I teach MLA and APA every day, so we had to include that. And academic writing, or Scholars Can See Right Through You, Emily Winterhaven, who is a ghost at the New York Public Library. Informative writing, or You Can Fool Most Zombies 100% of the Time. Buster Ashford, who is a brilliant scientist working on the T-cell virus. Next. Business and professional writing, or Use All Your Well-Learned Politesse. Countess Cliché owns a mortuary company, and Jack the Ripper works for her, so he comes in and just does some management talks. Writing for the Web, or Who's the Zombie Now? Murder Legendre, who is a Haitian voodoo priest. Grammar and word choice, or gnawing on the brains of Chunk and Spite, which is Cedric Salmon from you.
Okay. Cedric Sellon is no ordinary vampire. Turned at the tender age of 17, he is immortally trapped inside the body of an adolescent. Never to become a grown man, and with 400 years of wisdom, he finds it pretty frustrating. He manages to overcome his chronic frustration using strategic coping mechanisms, namely writing and attending high school, perhaps the most de-stressing activity anyone can pursue. For what is more relaxing than drama, hormones, and repetitive scholastics? Given his 400 years of English and reading, and the fact that he's been in the high school honors English classes for the past 2 centuries, Cedric is clearly an expert on the functions of the English language, which is why he has agreed to pen these pages. Of course, we had to promise him a box set of Jersey Shore and a case of Red Bull, the taste of centuries, old gentleman. Who knew? To obtain his services, but we think it was worth it. Cedric is special. We're just certain that his writing will sparkle.
Then our last chapter is actually on publishing, the dark side of publishing, or you've killed all your characters, so who do you have to resurrect to get a publishing deal around here? And that's by Antonia Cackle, who is a necromancer. And then I will read you the afterword where it ends, picking up from our preface. So an afterword from the authors, what's left of them anyway, or in the velvet darkness of the blackest night, or perhaps not with a bang but a whimper. You last saw our 3 intrepid writers holed up in an apartment facing a zombie blitzkrieg, a setting sun, a dying laptop, and a publication deadline. You'd probably like to hear that at the last possible moment, the United States Armed Forces swept into the city, annihilated the zombie horde ascending the fire escape, and rushed the trio of writers to a safe house on a tropical island riddled with fresh pineapple and coconut cocktails. But that's not what happened. Stan was the first to go. With his sledgehammer in hand, he wedged himself against the wall between the 2 windows that opened onto the fire escape. He took the first zombie with a smash to the skull, as if he were playing whack-a-mole at Joker's at his grandkid's birthday party. But when the second zombie crashed through the window behind him and wrapped its arms around his waist, Stan didn't have time to bring the hammer back around before the creature took a chunk of meat out of his forearm. At the sound of crashing glass, Rachel retreated behind the feng shui tower of canned goods and was immediately flooded with an ironic sense of calm. It didn't last, though, as a blue jumpsuit-clad zombie crashed his meaty fist through the tower and all that feng shui magic evaporated in an instant. He grabbed hold of her red hair and yanked her scalp toward his gnashing teeth. Like iron pincers, they pierced her skull and penetrated the fleshy gray matter of her brain in a log flume-ride spray of blood, killing her instantly. When the first zombie crashed through the window, it was Araminta who fled through the front door of the apartment, laptop clutched to her chest like a high school textbook in a teen romance. With the stairs pulverized, she had nowhere to go but up, so that's what she did. She ran up 4 flights of stairs before she found an apartment with an open door and flung herself inside. Bolting it shut behind her, she scrambled to open the laptop and save the final document before sending it to the printer at the stroke of midnight. Relief swam through her as a smile lifted the corners of her mouth. "It's done," she said with a sigh. "Now I can..." But Araminta never finished her thought. As she backed away from the laptop, she failed to notice the creature shambling up behind her. Once a 90-year-old shut-in with blanched white hair and folds of wrinkles hanging from her jowls, the woman had long ago lost her teeth. When the zombie virus took her, her dentures had been sitting in a glass by her bed. It never occurred to the zombie to put the teeth back in her mouth, not even as she gummed away at Araminta's shoulder with supernatural tenacity. It took a while, but her steel-trapped jaws finally managed to break some bones. She used her fingers to dig into the flesh and pull out some meaty bits before Araminta lost consciousness. All 3 of our authors died, but not for long. Look out your window now, if you dare. You might just see them wandering the streets below, hands outstretched before them. They call out for brains, the brains of writers, writers like you.
speechless.
Who
You'd say,
reads
what are these
nonfiction
guys
at
doing?
these things?